everybody, does everybody have a copy? All right, great. Now, I'm assuming that when all of you started your jobs, whatever jobs you may be in, that you've had to go through some training, whether this training was on a computer, was in a classroom, or somebody just handed you a book and said, you know what, read this and figure out what you're supposed to do. Now, I'm hoping that, generally people have a story. It's a good story or a bad story. But they have a story of how their training went. And I'm hoping somebody who is able to chime in and maybe provide a good example of something that worked for them or something that didn't work for them, that they felt really impaired their ability to do their jobs. And my first example I can tell you is when I started working for the Columbia Medical Center in New York. So I was an employee of the Columbia Libraries, but because I was working on the medical campus, they made me go through training about hazardous waste, wearing a hazmat suit, just because I was going to be in a hospital environment, even though I was never actually going to enter the hospital or be around any of these environments or deal with any of these materials. I was going through all this training. None of it applied to me, so by definition, I suddenly had an obstacle. I was not interested, so I wasn't paying attention. This also then applied to any of the training courses that I had to take, which did apply to me. Of course, by that time I was so bored, I really didn't care. And so I kept going through this, and I said, well, why am I going through this? How is this going to help me in my job? I'm still finding the answer. I still haven't found it yet. But this is partly what got me into instructional design, was thinking about your training has to apply to your job. It has to apply to your stated purpose, whatever it is. If it's personal, if it's professional, whatever that may be. So I'd like to ask all of you if you might have an anecdote or two that you might share as to what about whatever training you might have taken in whatever environment worked for you or didn't. Anybody?
I just went through a training class about 2 weeks ago, and the instructor lost control of the class, and we spent over an hour and a half people just writing a moment about their safety of their company. And then, of course, content of the material, the class was good when we talked about it. Just that experience of just sitting there for an hour and a half, not even talking about the course or page to go to, is a waste of time. And then it was a 4-day class, and then we did the same thing the next day.
Okay.
And stuff. So it was.
So you didn't really walk away being wiser?
Not at that point.
Okay. So then let me ask you this, sort of the add-on question. Presumably then whatever you would have learned in that course, you ended up learning on the job as you were doing it.
For that part, and then I ended up reading the book while going ahead of him while he was letting the class go on other topics.
Okay.
So I was basically learning myself by reading the course material while they were
Right. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Please.
I read this before, but the person who I was going to learn something from was totally unprepared for something.
Okay.
I think he knew about the material.
Okay.
Seemed to be read up his syllabus. It seemed to be fairly well written, covered the subject matter well, but he was unprepared and like a fish out of water.
Right.
So
he was an expert. There's a difference between knowing your stuff and teaching your stuff. Right. Okay. Anybody else? Any good ones? Anything that you said, wow, even in school, you might have had a favorite teacher who they taught you something and you got it. Like, yeah, I get it. I can go actually do this. Somebody taught me a chemistry experiment, and I just had a blast doing it, and, now I'm looking for every opportunity that I can do a chemistry experiment. It can happen. It doesn't have to be professional, though that's okay. It could be in your personal life. All right? Anybody? Come on, we're always learning, right? Whether you're conscious of this or not, you're always learning. Okay? A few months ago, I was shopping for a TV. I hadn't shopped for a TV in 12 years. And that became a learning experience. Because it's not about just me going and say, okay, I want that one. It's about me knowing, okay, what the specs are going to do for me.